Next up, we've got Dr. William Gunn from Mendeley, and he's going to, he's going to follow that talk. Good luck, William.
Yeah, this is going to be quite an act to follow. And, you know, I even have the word serious on my slide here, so maybe that's setting the tone. But thanks very much, David, and to the STM Association for having me. It's really is quite an honor to speak in front of such a distinguished audience such as this. Okay, so my remit here is to tell you a little bit about, you know, the social tools that researchers are using and how they're doing actual serious science with it. There will be no dancing. I'm actually going to start from a little bit of a historical perspective. It was really interesting to hear that the keynote talk this morning giving this digital native, you know, digital immigrant kind of paradigm, and I think that sort of sets up my story in a way. I was born, you know, in 1975, so technically should be in the digital immigrant phase. However, I was in rural Mississippi, and for me, being a nerd in rural Mississippi, the internet was like my way out, and so I had always had my head very much into the internet and into you know, whatever kind of you know, broader reach that provided for me. You know, and in fact, I've got my job and my promotions and most of my friends and everything via the internet. So it's been a critical part of how I see the world. And so most of you, when you see this diagram, this looks very, very familiar to you in kind of the flow of how content gets around in the scholarly ecosystem. The interesting thing I'd like to point out about this is that this is actually from a manuscript about the scholarly monograph publishing in 1770s. And the fact that it looks very, very similar to us today could mean that we've happened upon one of the best systems ever, or it could mean that we're due for a change. I would propose that perhaps we are due for a change. With something like the internet, you no longer need all of these different systems and structures necessarily to connect readers and authors as you did. You'll notice that the publisher does not appear on this slide, and the question is, where should they fit on this slide? One could argue that the role for them is as the intermediary between both the readers and the authors, and I certainly think that there is a case to be made for that. But we have to break out of this paradigm a little bit first. So this will not be a new story to anyone in this room, I certainly hope. The thought of disruption and what's happening to other content industries. The point I would like to make is that we saw in some of this happen first in the music industry. We saw a lot of the same discussions happen about, you know, oh, everything's going to crumble, it's all going to fall apart. But in fact, we realized that providing a product that very many people want is very sustainable. All that happens there is that the discovery and the delivery mechanisms changed, but the business is still there. Likewise, with the rise of the internet and blogging, it really did change how people communicated and connected with audiences, both media organizations and the consumers of that content. And there's no question that newspapers and media have gone through a radical shift. But again, a service that gives people what they want is in fact a sustainable business model, but the thing that's changed is how people engage with that. They're expecting much more of a two-way street. So the point is about what is changing, and a lot of what people say is changing is that it's more about the networks and less about the destinations at this point. This is my network here. I have some networks of people I know at Mendeley over here on this side. I have some people that I know from online science folks. We call ourselves the Bio Gang for historical reasons there. People that I know from biotech, startup kind of space. There's over here, these are people that I knew from my PhD. Very much kind of an interesting distinction between how things are separated in kind of the academic world and the world of hardly academic, but mostly commercial. And this area down here of publishing has certainly grown. This is a little bit dated. They quit making this lovely tool. When you have a social network and you're going to engage with that from a publisher perspective, you have some opportunities there to change how you do discovery, to change how you do delivery, and to build relationships and to foster that engagement. All of the things that were successful for the disruptions that happened in the other types of content industries. So the question is, can we bring the tools and the user experience from the other parts of the web? Can we bring the efficiencies that the web has brought to all of these other places into the academic realm and realize some of the efficiencies, at the same time providing for a better user experience? One point I'd like to make before going into kind of our perspective from the Mendeley side of things on this is if you're going to leverage the web, it requires an open infrastructure for doing this. All of the things that have been successful, standards turn out to be open standards. HTML, TCP, IP, open standards, they make the web work. WordPress is the blogging platform which has become successful and many sites use. There are other things like Drupal and so on. Open source, they have open APIs. They're very, useful and usable. And at the same time, they also have sustainable business model behind them. Twitter, as well. Successful IPO, publicly traded company, makes lots of money by providing a platform and not monetizing the content that appears there. Now, it's 140 characters, or it's hardly a novel, but people have published books of their tweets, interestingly enough. Not to put Mendeley in necessarily the same category as these older things, but I do think that we're trying to learn a little bit from the lessons of what has worked, what has successfully leveraged the web, and what has not. So this is where we see ourselves fitting into the picture here. And now, it won't be news to most of you that Mendeley was acquired by Elsevier. April will be 2 years ago. And so I have Mendeley here as part of this overall thing, but really this is now fitting within the larger ecosystem of all of the Elsevier products. And we see there's kind of this workflow for researchers. They write papers, they look for papers, they discuss them, they annotate them, and it's just kind of this continual churn of taking in that which has been produced, analyzing it, doing work, and coming out with more things. We have a spot that's sort of central in this. And so the idea is, for us, is instrumenting the research workflow around all these things and engaging with the researchers in that way. The way that we do this is we have a desktop application that people use all of the time. You dump your PDFs in there like you might do with your music files from iTunes or what have you. It aggregates all this stuff in the cloud, gives you access from various devices. And in the process of doing all of this, we're collecting very rich signals, and we're collecting from the domain experts. So that this turns out to be quite valuable data. As people are using the tool to read papers, to keep track of notes, to annotate things and to share them with their colleagues, it's all connected to their profile on Mendeley, where they've got detailed information about themselves, what they've published, what their discipline is, groups they've joined, people they're professionally connected with. They're discussing these papers online. This is one of my favorite groups about, classical texts in biology. It's amazing the different viewpoints on what is a classic in an individual person's realm of biology. So what we're able to do with all of this data then to leverage this is to say, okay, well, it was mentioned earlier there's a problem with information overload. Well, the saying among the circles I run in is that it's not information overload, it's filter failure. We've been able to take this massive amount of data, use it to make better filters, to recommend things to people so that you don't even have to do a search for an article. The content that is most relevant to you finds you. And that has a very high acceptance rate and is a very effective way of delivering just-in-time content to the folks when they need it the most. We can do this because we have this document relatedness system. We have used that to build a sort of a recommendation framework as a service. So any publisher can take this data, leverage the data that we've collected, and get back recommendations based on their content for what is for what's relevant, and to build that kind of engagement into their own products. This helps you serve whatever niche audience you might have, but leveraging this greater commons. I just want to give one little example about the value of data that I think is pertinent here. Maybe 5-6 years ago now, folks were tossing around this idea of, well, what if we used the new online engagement metrics like page views and so on and so forth to apply that to the academic realm? Could we come up with something that is citation-like, or could we come up with something totally different to supplement this? And this concept of altmetrics that I'm sure many of you have heard now. Over that short period of time, and largely because data is available comprehensively from our open API, there have been 4 different companies that have been launched. Impact Story has a very large Sloan grant that they're working on, building great profiles. The PLOS Article Level Metrics Code, now Project Legato, is a suite that publishers are using to collect and display article level metrics on their papers. Plum Analytics, recently bought by EBSCO, provides this kind of a back-end service for institutions and libraries. And then, of course, altmetric.com, which we're going to hear about in just a few minutes. So things are in a very early stage. Obviously, this is, we're trying to keep a very experimental and agile mindset. But I think the overall message here is that there's a lot of opportunities in this new world to leverage the efficiencies of the internet to capture that discovery, to capture the engagement that people increasingly are wanting. And building social tools and using open platforms is the way to do that. Thank you very much.